G'day mate, welcome to Factorio with me, JD. Well, not really Factorio, sort of a look at Factorio, a look back in history at Factorio, because with no new videos this week, because I'm busy probably applying plaster to walls right about now in my new studio. If you don't know any details, I'll link up the top right to the channel update video that sort of covers all that sort of thing. But with no new videos this week, I decided we should look back in time and I should give you at least something you can binge watch in the meantime. So, what we're going to do is going to go back and look at a little bit in history at, you know, the many different Factorio series I've done the last 2 years or so. Because 2020 and 2021, not so great years. So, you know what? What we should do, we should look back at the highlights, the best of the series over the last couple of years, and have a little bit of a walkthrough. So, first thing I want to talk about is, obviously, my definitive guide to Factorio. Because it was, well, my first series. My first series when 1.0 came out. And I'm not biased at all. It pretty much sums up everything you might need to know or might need to recap if you've been away from Factorio for a little while. Playlist is obviously down in the description. Playlist for all these different series will be down in the description. But the definitive guide was really designed so if you needed a recap on trains, there would be a title there in one of the videos that was all about trains. Do you want help with circuit networks? Again, yep, there'd be a title there all about circuit networks. Combat, all that sort of stuff. They were all in the titles, very quick and easy to reference to, along with chapters throughout the videos. This is where we ended. We ended with a completed base. A completed rocket launch, even managed to launch a couple of satellites off into space, and we had a productive base. You know, we had your stock standard smelters, we had trains doing deliveries, we had our original crashed spaceship, and we had a bus, actually very clean bus with proper pull-offs and everything else. It beats the hell out of Factorio on a 45, just personal opinions. And of course we had a rocket silo ready to go, ready to launch rockets whenever the next rocket was due to be launched. And that was the completion of the series. But that was not the only series that happened during the last couple of years. So our last series featured a rocket launch. A rocket that would fire off occasionally, and all the way back here in the Rocket Rush series, I featured a few rocket launches. You know, if we look up in the top left-hand corner, around about 64,000 rockets have been launched in this series. It is a 400-hour series. Well, 400 hours worth of playtime at least. It was an extensive series, and it's one job rather than producing a base that produces science, that then does science that then makes us smarter. This base, its only objective was to launch as many rockets into space as possible. That was its one goal, and it successfully launched 15 rockets per minute, continuously, never ending, and fired and fired and fired, and that was its one goal in life. And I have to say, for a Megabase, it was very different and very challenging. I've seen many series out there where people are going for, you know, 5,000 science packs per second and so on and so forth, or per minute rather. You know, certain goals they're setting themselves. This was just about, can we get a lot of rockets in the air at once and continuously? And we have everything timed up, and as you can see, they launch in like a tandem, a wave, a reverse wave, and another wave, because I wanted to launch rockets every minute on the minute, and let's go. Anyway, series after this I want to talk about, it is the Rocket Rush series. Now, the Rocket Rush series, after having the confidence of launching many rockets continuously, I wanted to step things up a notch, and I wanted to get a rocket launched as quickly as possible. Didn't want to speed run the game, didn't want to take things that far, I just wanted to have a launch relatively quickly. And at the just halfway point through the actual series, we got one rocket launched in just under 8 hours without rushing too much. It had been a fairly slow-paced build. As we can see, we have used a lot of blueprints. We have made a wonderful bus. It is an extra wide bus because this series was actually continuing on into the next series, where now that Jetty had some confidence in launching some rockets, he was going to launch a lot of rockets. A lot of very expensive rockets with some custom payloads. Our Rocket Rush series base basically morphed into this one, our Sub-X base. It was a special series I started when the channel hit 5,000 subscribers, and the plan was to launch a rocket for every single subscriber. Well, not a rocket, a spaceship. A spaceship. I want to take things one step further and not just launch a rocket, but launch a full habitable spaceship for every single subscriber of the channel. Which meant I was up for at least 5,000 launches. At least. And then as the series continued, the subscribers kept rolling in. And this series actually took so long, because you guys were so generous and subscribed to the channel, that it went from having launched about 5,000 spaceships to closer to 8,000 spaceships. Because this series actually continued right away from version 18 of Factorio all the way into and after 1.0 was actually released. So, this particular series, we were modding it a lot. It was fairly heavily modified. We were bringing in compressed plate rather than normal plate, because we needed to up the ante a little bit. We had some very important cargo. Oh, there's a rocket launch right now. That's another spaceship being launched up. Well, the components to build the spaceship in the space dock in space. We're launching up all the components actually required to build that spaceship for that particular supporter, which would auto-update the log with, well, if I have the person's name, it would actually grab the name directly from the YouTube API. If we didn't have the name, it would just, you know, give the next number in the logs. And this was, like I said, a very... Whoop, there goes a second rocket. A very, very long series, a very, very expensive series. Very time-consuming series. Even with it being as heavily modified as it was, it still had a significant amount of rocket launches. Speaking of rocket launches, the items that we had to actually launch up were some sub-X components. This is a mod I actually recommend to a lot of people if they wish to step into Factorio mods, but not step in too heavily. Let's just step up a few tiles. So we'd have to launch, you know, a fusion reactor into space to build our spaceship. 10 pieces of hull component, which, you know, we could see are fairly expensive. Some protection fields. We only need one protection field, right? It's on the right. Yes, one protection field. That was excellent. That was a cheaper one. The thrusters, unfortunately, you need 4 thrusters to keep your spaceship moving. With 2 fuel cells, that was the primary and the backup fuel cell. Habitation was important, so the subscriber could fly their way home. Of course, life support, because I was not going to send any supporters off without any, no life support. Dead supporters. Of course, the command center, so they could fly their way home. The astrometrics lab, so they could navigate, and finally the fast and light engine, which was slightly expensive. And this is one of the reasons this series was both a pleasure and a pain. I was continuously launching a very large amount of productivity modules into space constantly, which is a very large drain on your base when you're trying to probably put the productivity modules into actual production. But yes, this was another series that we completed. It's a series I thoroughly enjoyed playing. It's one I'd highly recommend. But you might be saying, Jetty, so far all you've shown is like Megabase stuff. You know, I'm missing Factorio on a 45. I'm missing that sort of that left field thinking. I want a bit more of that. Well, good news is, prior to doing some Megabases, we did some combat. So, if you're looking for something a little bit more out left field, another series that I thoroughly enjoyed, but it was a little bit combat heavy, was a series that was affectionately known as Bite of Hell, where, as you can see, there may or may not be a problem going on in the background, because I invited guests. I invited a lot of guests. A lot of guests. And the guests grew in size over time, evolution, pollution, and friendship pellets. They absorbed friendship pellets, I'm sure, and led to bigger and better friends. If we just scroll out to here, we can see that there was a few issues, and the series actually ended because we can see, actually, this is a perfect example. This little category 11 spinner, That's category 11. He's evolved past Behemoth 11 times now. Had a laser resistance of 105%. Actually meant the guy healed under laser fire, which was a little bit unfortunate because he's being shot at with a lot of lasers. A lot of lasers. He also has 100% explosive resistance, which means nuclear weapons don't do much. Yes, this was a series that involved many unhappy friends that would pile up, line up, and then decide to come say hello, bit by bit by bit. So, if you enjoy a little bit of combat, or you just enjoy hearing your favorite YouTuber scream like a little girl, I'd highly recommend this series. But more things out of left field. I decided to take what little colour was in Factorio once and just remove it entirely. And that led to our NoirTorio series. A NoirTorio series that came with a custom mod pack with many custom implementations to take what colour was in Factorio and remove it entirely. So the NoirTorio series was a very different series. We built a bunch of custom mods to remove colour from the game and only added colour back for the biters. So if we wander around parts of the map and parts of the base, we can see that it's a very desaturated world we're working on. Which was much the point of the series. Along with one of the things I definitely tried to do was I had some colour in the wildlife, but much less colour once we'd finished concreting the world, which was the plan for the series as well. And as we can see, our little biter friends, after you impale them with a few friendship pellets, would leave a little bit of colour splashed around the place to indicate where they once might have been. Oh, yes, there was also some... Go away. Go away. Yes, very large friends to keep you on your toes. Again, this was a series, very custom series. The mods were made available for those that wish to join along, play along, and enjoy the mayhem that was NoirTorio. It was like I said, a very different series with some interesting perks, and we were set up on an island where I had to, well, clear off the island, including keeping a little farm alive, to make sure that the biter goop, because the biters did drop some important resources we could use, along with upgrade our modules, the more kills we had. So we kept a certain amount of them live, and yeah. Oh, we also had flying biters. Just to keep me on my toes. Which leads me into our current series, that being Factorio on a 45. Because after you've put 10,000 hours into a game, after you've built the biggest bases you can, launching the most rockets you can per minute, after you've then turned around and built a giant base going for mass launches, after you've installed as many biter-friendly mods, or biter-unfriendly mods as possible, to make the biters as hard as possible. And then also turned around and completely desaturated the world, only adding a spark of colour back for the wildlife that remained on the map. You needed something new. So that led us to the Factorio on a 45 map, where I took everything I had learnt and I had known about Factorio after sticking at least 10,000 hours in this game, threw it all out the window, and built everything on a 45 degrees. Which I have to say, the game is not at all designed for, neither is your brain. So, if you liked any of these series, if you like the concept of any of these series, you're just looking for something to binge watch until Factorio on a 45 resumes, or until a new series starts after Factorio on a 45, I recommend have a look down in the description. Pick some of the different playlists below. There is many hours of Factorio out there if you want to catch up on some of the old series. At the same time, by all means, bookmark this video. Come back after you're done. There's always another series to watch. But with all that said, I thank you guys so much for joining me for this quick recap, retour. Check out of some of the old series that I've done, and looking forward to what comes next. Anyway, see you guys in a couple of days. Alright, bye.